They seated me in the kitchen. Not near it, not next to the catering tent. In it, between the industrial freezer and a clattering prep station where servers in black and white uniforms dodged each other with trays of lobster risotto. Somewhere between the smell of roasted garlic and a dishwasher's hiss, I sat on a folding chair with a white linen napkin that couldn't cover the humiliation. I wasn't a forgotten cousin. I wasn't a +1 from someone's office. I was the groom's sister. I was the CEO of Orion Systems, the company that had just signed a $30 million contract with the bride's father's firm. And still they sat me in the kitchen. A champagne flute trembled in my hand, not from nerves, but from restraint, because the only thing louder than the clatter of plates around me was the roar in my head. How did we get here? 2 hours earlier, I had arrived at the Carter estate with hope in my heart and Julian Park, my partner and one of the sharpest venture capitalists on the East Coast, by my side. I wore a tailored navy dress that cost more than my first apartment. It wasn't vanity. It was armor. I thought maybe this would be the day they saw me. I hadn't always felt invisible. Growing up in Charleston, Derek and I had been close. Only a year and a half apart, we were inseparable as kids. We built forts in the marshes behind our house, raced bikes down cobblestone streets, and played hide-and-seek in the shadow of our grandfather's old seafood warehouse. On the outside, we looked like twins. On the inside, we couldn't have been more different. Derek liked the spotlight. Football games, talent shows, prom king campaigns, he thrived on applause. I liked questions, code, books, solitude. I was the kid who skipped homecoming to finish a physics project, and the one who never got asked to dance in the first place. Still, I didn't resent him. Not at first. He was my brother. But the older we got, the louder the divide became, especially in our family. Carolyn and Martin Brooks, our parents, were Southern to the core. Church on Sundays, sweet tea in mason jars, and a deep-rooted belief that men carried the family name while women carried casseroles and expectations. Derek was destined for leadership. I was book smart. When I got accepted into Georgia Tech on a full scholarship for software engineering, my mother patted my shoulder and said, "That's cute, honey. Just don't forget to leave room for a husband." I didn't forget. I just didn't care. What I did forget was how deep favoritism could cut. How even as an adult, with a multi-million-dollar company and dozens of employees, I could still be reduced to a seat behind the swinging kitchen doors. I remember the exact moment it all clicked. Tiffany Carter, the bride, the new golden daughter-in-law, stood in the doorway, sipping from a crystal flute, eyes gleaming. She didn't look shocked to find me in the kitchen. She looked satisfied, and I knew this wasn't an accident. This was a message. I wasn't one of them. Not really. Not ever. But that was about to change. Charleston summers were brutal. Wet heat clinging to your skin like another layer of clothing. But in those early years, it didn't matter. Derek and I would run barefoot through the backyard, dodge sprinklers, catch fireflies in mason jars. He had a laugh that cracked open the dusk like thunder, and I followed him everywhere. If he jumped off the dock into the muddy Wando River, I was right behind him, no matter how scared I was. He was my best friend before I even knew what the word meant. It started to shift in middle school, subtly, slowly, like someone changing the rules of a game without telling you. Derek joined the Youth Football League. Suddenly, weekends weren't for building tree forts. They were for tailgates, trophies, and practices that always ran long. My parents bought him cleats and warm-ups, took photos of every game, hosted spaghetti dinners for the team. And me? I won the state math competition that year. There was no dinner, just a half-hearted, "We're proud of you, sweetie," before Dad turned back to ESPN. In high school, the split widened like a fault line. Derek became a local star, quarterback, prom royalty, voted most likely to succeed in a yearbook he barely read. I spent my nights in the robotics lab, coding until midnight, building algorithms that beat my AP calculus teacher's tests. By junior year, I had offers from MIT, Caltech, Georgia Tech. I chose Georgia Tech because it was close enough to home, and I was still naive enough to think they might care. When I opened the letter, full scholarship, direct admit to their advanced research track, I ran to the kitchen, breathless with joy. My mother looked up from chopping onions. That's great, baby. Did you remember to RSVP for Derek's awards banquet next Friday? That moment stayed with me longer than the diploma ever did. I tried to believe it wasn't personal, that they were just old-fashioned, that maybe they didn't know how to celebrate a daughter whose wins couldn't be framed on a football field or announced at a country club brunch. But the truth was they just didn't see me. When Derek got into the University of South Carolina on a sports scholarship, they threw a garden party. There was a custom cake with his number on it, balloons in the school colors, a slideshow of baby photos. When I graduated summa cum laude from Georgia Tech, I texted them the news. They sent back a thumbs-up emoji. And yet, I kept trying. I'd call during holidays, ask about their health, offer to fly home. Most times they were too busy or already had plans with Derek and Tiffany. I'd send them updates on Orion Systems, our milestones, our growth, the fact that we'd made Forbes 10 startups to watch, and they'd respond with a single line, "Congrats, sweetie. Hope you're getting enough sleep." It was like shouting across a canyon and getting an echo with someone else's name. And then the final insult arrived in the form of a phone call I'll never forget. It was the night before Derek's wedding. I had just finished a board meeting and stepped out onto the balcony of my condo. The city lights of Charleston sparkled below me, and I had that rare, quiet feeling that maybe, just maybe, things were starting to come together. I called Derek. "Hey," said, "just wanted to say I'm happy for you. And I'm really looking forward to tomorrow." There was a pause. "Thanks, Sienna," he said. "Listen, about the seating arrangements," and that was all. He trailed off, dodged the rest, said Tiffany had made changes, that things were hectic, but I heard it, the avoidance, the guilt, the decision already made. And for the first time in 38 years, I felt the truth settle fully into my chest. They didn't forget me. They placed me exactly where they thought I belonged. Out of sight, the decision to start Orion Systems didn't come with fanfare. There was no grand announcement, no champagne toast, no investor handshake across a mahogany table. It began quietly, the way most revolutions do, at a folding desk in a one-bedroom apartment with a hand-me-down laptop and the dull hum of a mini fridge. I was 29, burned out from a toxic job at a logistics software firm that paid me half of what they paid the men I trained. I'd already built 3 proprietary tools for them, none with my name attached. One Friday, after my male colleague got promoted for implementing a feature I designed alone, I walked out at lunch and never went back. That night, I opened a Google Doc titled Project Orion, and I started building. I didn't have a safety net, no inheritance, no parental seed funding. My father had laughed when I mentioned I was striking out on my own. "Sienna, it's cute that you want to run with the big dogs," he'd said. "But remember, even dogs know when to stay on the porch." So I stayed hungry. I slept on my pull-out sofa for 2 years, ate canned soup and dry cereal, declined every brunch, every date, every distraction. I coded 18 hours a day, bootstrapping every function of the business myself: sales, UX, back-end security, even customer service. I failed dozens of times, but I learned faster. Eventually, I landed 1 small client, then 3, then 15. By the end of year 3, I had a team of 8 and an actual office space with windows and a door that locked. We specialized in supply chain optimization, automating and visualizing movement of goods across warehousing networks. It wasn't sexy, but it was critical and efficient, and the software worked really, really well. What came next was almost cinematic. 6 months before Derek's wedding, Vincent Carter's company, Carter Development, one of the largest real estate conglomerates on the Eastern Seaboard, began searching for a logistic solution to streamline their property pipeline: materials, labor, permits, deliveries across 36 active projects. His operations director, Helen Park, saw me speak at a small logistics expo in Raleigh. I was the only woman on the stage that day. She approached me afterward, curious but skeptical. I offered her a free pilot demo. 3 weeks later, we were in active talks. 3 months later, Orion signed its largest contract to date, $30 million over 5 years, with a clause for international expansion. It changed everything. We tripled our staff, opened a second office. I was featured in Fast Company and invited to speak on 2 panels. Even our competitors took notice. Still, I wanted to share the moment with someone who'd known me before it all began. So I called home. Mom answered. I told her about the Carter contract, about how it would change our growth trajectory forever. That's nice, sweetie, she said. Did you get your invitation to Derek's wedding yet? It's at the Carter estate. Isn't that funny? Funny wasn't the word I'd use. 2 weeks later, I walked into the engagement party and came face to face with Vincent Carter for the first time. He was taller than I expected. Silver hair, crisp white shirt under a pale blue linen jacket, and a handshake that radiated confidence. "You're Sienna Brooks?" he asked, surprised. "As in Orion Systems." I nodded, unsure what he knew. "Your team's implementation blew our department away," he said. "Helen won't stop raving about you. The forecast projections alone are staggering. You're going to save us a fortune." I smiled. "That's the goal." "We'll need to set up a private dinner sometime soon. I'd love to hear more about your roadmap." Before I could respond, my mother appeared beside me like smoke. "You two have met?" she asked, blinking rapidly. "Just now," I said. "Mr. Carter was kind enough to compliment our work." Vincent raised an eyebrow. "Wait, Brooks, are you related to Derek?" "She's his sister," my mother said too quickly. "Our little tech genius. She's always had a thing for computers. Derek's more hands-on, of course, like his father." Vincent tilted his head, calculating something behind his eyes. "Well, seems talent runs in the family, just in different lanes." But I knew. I saw it. Derek hadn't told him, hadn't even mentioned me, because my success didn't fit the version of himself he wanted to sell. That night, after the engagement party, I sat in my Tesla for a long time before driving away. The compliment from Vincent Carter should have felt like a win. He wasn't just a billionaire. He was notoriously hard to impress. But all I could think about was the way my mother had dismissed it, like I was a child showing off a finger painting. "Our little tech genius," she'd said with that tight smile she always used when she didn't understand something but wanted to seem supportive. Not Sienna, the CEO. Not Sienna, the woman who signed a deal your family's company could never dream of. Just a hobbyist with a lucky break. And Derek, the fact that he hadn't told Vincent anything, that wasn't oversight. That was omission. Deliberate. Precise. He'd told everyone at the party about his high school football stats, about his leadership role at a construction firm Dad handed to him on a silver platter. But me? I was never part of his pitch. Not as a sister. Not as a business ally. Not even as a person. Still, I wasn't ready to give up. Not completely. Maybe I was stupid, or maybe just loyal to a fault. But I told myself the wedding might be different. That now, after the Carter contract, after the moment with Vincent, maybe they'd finally see me clearly. So I did what I always did when I wanted to be taken seriously. I prepared. I booked a fitting with a stylist in Atlanta. Chose a navy blue sheath dress with sharp lines and clean authority. It wasn't pastel like the rest of the family planned to wear, but I didn't care. I wasn't there to blend in. I was there to take up space. Julian offered to come with me. We'd only been dating a few months, but he understood me in ways no one else had. Former Goldman partner, now running his own VC fund, Julian knew what it meant to build from grit, and to be underestimated because you didn't come from legacy. "Are you sure you want me there?" he asked the week before, over wine and Korean takeout on my balcony. "Honestly," I said, "I need someone there who sees me, all of me, not just the resume or the potential." He smiled. Then I'm in. But I draw the line at matching bow ties. The night before the wedding, I called Derek. It wasn't planned. I just needed to hear his voice. To believe, even for a moment, that this was still the boy who once dared me to jump off the marina dock and held my hand when I was too scared. "Hey," I said when he picked up. "Just wanted to say I'm really happy for you. And I'm looking forward to tomorrow." He sounded distracted. Music and voices buzzed in the background. "Thanks, Sienna. It's been wild. Tiffany's got 3 planners on speed dial. Vincent's adding last-minute guests every hour." I hesitated. "Is there anything I can help with?" A pause. "Nah. We've got it under control." And then, almost as an afterthought, he added, "Oh, about the seating arrangements." My chest tightened. "Yes." I asked. There've been some changes. The guest list kept growing. But it's all handled now. Nothing to worry about. Right. Nothing to worry about. I hung up, sat in silence, and stared out the window at the Charleston skyline. There was a small ache behind my ribs. Not quite pain, just recognition. The kind you feel when a hope you've held too long finally stops pretending to be anything else. Still, I showed up the next day. Hair perfectly done. Makeup light but confident. Julian in a tailored gray suit, looking like every woman's dream investment banker. My posture said power. My eyes said focus. As we turned down the long, tree-lined drive of the Carter estate, past fountains, marble lions, and $100,000 SUVs, I whispered something Julian didn't hear. "Please, just once. Let them see me." But the truth was, they never had, and they weren't about to start now. The Carter estate looked like it had been airlifted from the Amalfi Coast. White stone columns, ivy-draped balconies, and an ocean breeze that carried the scent of citrus and salt. Guests milled about the manicured gardens, champagne flutes in hand, their laughter floating beneath string quartets and crystal chandeliers strung from trees. It was ostentatious in the way only old money can afford to be understated. Julian whistled low as we stepped out of the car. "You didn't tell me we were walking into a Vanity Fair cover shoot." "I didn't know," I said honestly. "I've never been here." We were greeted by a valet in a white glove uniform and ushered toward the reception tent, a towering structure of white silk, billowing softly in the breeze. Tables inside gleamed under chandeliers, each place setting lined with gold-rimmed china and engraved name cards. "Let's find our seats," I said, scanning for the chart. A wedding coordinator stood near the entrance, scrolling through an iPad. I approached her with a polite smile. "Sienna Brooks. +1." Her smile faltered. "Brooks? Brooks!" She tapped, scrolled again. Her brow creased. "HM. That's odd. Just one moment." Julian glanced at me. I felt it too, an invisible thread pulling tight in my chest. The coordinator disappeared into the tent. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Finally, she returned with another woman, older, in a crisp navy suit. "Ms. Brooks, I'm so sorry for the delay. I'm Meredith, the catering manager. It appears there's been an oversight." I stiffened. "I RSVP'd 2 months ago. I'm the groom's sister." "Yes, of course. And we do have you noted. Unfortunately, due to some last-minute guest additions, all primary tables are now at capacity." "Then move someone," Julian said sharply. "She's family." Meredith smiled tightly. "We've arranged alternative seating. If you'll follow me." We didn't speak as she led us around the side of the tent, through a service hallway, and into a staff corridor that opened into the kitchen. The air hit me like a slap, hot, metallic, alive with the sounds of clanging pots and shouted orders. At the far end, a folding table sat awkwardly between a prep counter and an industrial freezer. 2 chairs, a white cloth tossed over the surface like an afterthought. "You can't be serious," I said, heat rising to my face. "I do apologize," Meredith said, not quite meeting my eyes. The bride made some adjustments to accommodate high-priority guests. I'm a high-priority guest, I replied, my voice sharp. My company signed a $30 million contract with Vincent Carter last quarter. Meredith blinked. I wasn't informed of that. Of course she wasn't. And then, as if on cue, she appeared. Tiffany Carter, bride, socialite, heir apparent to the Carter charm empire, glided into the kitchen like she was descending the runway. Her designer gown shimmered. Her blonde hair swept into an elaborate updo secured by what looked like diamonds. She held a champagne flute as if it were a weapon. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, syrup dripping from every syllable. "Yes," I said, working to keep my voice steady. "You've seated me in the kitchen." Her eyes glittered. "We had to prioritize," she said, smiling. "Daddy's investors, out-of-town executives, the media table. I'm sure you understand." "Actually, I don't," I said. "I'm your husband's sister." She took a slow sip. "Scott approved the final layout this morning." The words hit harder than I expected. My own brother had signed off on this. Julian stepped forward. "This is completely inappropriate. We'll be joining the main reception." Tiffany's smile didn't waver, but the air around her grew colder. "The help eats in the kitchen," she said sweetly. "You should feel right at home, considering your background." Julian's fists clenched, and that's when it happened. Not rage, not an outburst, just something inside me broke, cleanly, like a bone that had always been fractured, finally giving way under weight too long carried. "Julian," I said quietly, "can you give me a minute?" He looked at me, concern tightening his face, then nodded. "I'll be just outside," he said, and left. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, invisible again, just a silhouette behind swinging doors. My breathing slowed, my spine straightened, and for the first time in years, I smiled, because now I knew exactly what I needed to do. The women's restroom off the main hallway was blissfully empty. Marble sinks, gold-framed mirrors, soft lighting designed to flatter bridal makeup. Everything elegant, everything cold. I locked myself in the last stall and leaned against the door, chest tight, stomach hollow. For 38 years I had swallowed so much. Every ignored achievement, every redirected conversation, every backhanded "we're proud of you, sweetie." I had carried it quietly, thinking that if I just worked hard enough, built enough, proved enough, someday they'd see me. Today was supposed to be that day. Instead, they put me in the kitchen. I slid to the floor, the satin hem of my dress brushing against cool tile. The tears came fast, hot, silent, relentless. I covered my mouth so no one would hear. Not the bridesmaids reapplying lip gloss. Not the servers grabbing breathers. Not anyone. Because even now, even here, I was still trying not to make anyone uncomfortable. That was the part that hit hardest. Even in humiliation, I still tried to protect their comfort. And for what? I thought about all the moments that had led here. My 16th birthday, when my parents forgot because Derek had a playoff game. 3 days later, they brought home a cake from Publix. The frosting was cracked, the candles melting sideways. "We were just so proud of Derek's performance," Mom had said. My college graduation, summa cum laude from Georgia Tech. I was valedictorian. My parents showed up late and missed my speech. Why? Because Derek's fraternity was hosting an alumni breakfast. The first time Orion Systems landed an angel investment. I called home, beaming. Dad said he couldn't talk. He was grilling steaks for Derek's promotion party. A promotion created just for him in a company he didn't build. They hadn't forgotten me. They had chosen not to see me. I let out a slow, shaking breath, and then my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it, but something in me, habit maybe, checked the screen. Eleanor Park, Director of Operations, Carter Development. I wiped my eyes and answered. "Sienna here." "Hi," Eleanor said. Her voice was calm, professional. "Just wanted to confirm our Monday meeting for Phase 2. Also, letting you know the first payment hit this morning. $30 million, right on schedule. I closed my eyes, let the number settle into my bones. 30 million. 3 years ago, I couldn't afford a new desk chair. Now I had the Carter family's empire running on code I wrote in a studio apartment, and they sat me in the kitchen. Sienna, you still there? Yes, I said, voice steadier. Thank you. I'll see you Monday. I hung up, and I laughed. Not bitter, not broken. Clear. I stood up, fixed my dress, walked to the mirror. My eyes were red, but my spine was straight. No more asking for space. No more waiting for permission. They wanted to seat me like the help? Fine. But they'd forgotten one thing. I own the system the entire operation runs on, and I had just remembered who I was. I stepped out of the bathroom into the hall, where Julian stood waiting, holding 2 champagne flutes. His brows furrowed as he looked at me. You okay? I took one of the glasses. Never better. Really? I sipped the champagne slowly. Really? He watched me, then smiled. What are you thinking? I turned to face the grand tent, the shimmering crowd, the laughter floating from people who had tried to shrink me. I'm thinking, I've spent my whole life waiting for them to value me. I looked back at Julian, my voice quiet but clear. Maybe it's time I did. The music swelled as we stepped back into the tent. The jazz band had shifted into something sultry and sophisticated. Servers floated between tables with trays of oysters and champagne. Laughter spilled like wine. No one noticed our return. Not at first. And that felt appropriate. They'd worked so hard to render me invisible. I scanned the room, eyes locking on the head table. There they were. Vincent Carter, flanked by Tiffany and Derek. Several older men in tailored suits surrounded them, nodding politely as Vincent gestured mid-sentence, no doubt mid-pitch. I recognized 2 of them, Thomas Harrington from Coastal Development and Gerald Winters from Apex Investments. Both major players, both potential allies. Julian leaned toward me. That's your shot. I didn't hesitate. We crossed the room, weaving through glittering gowns and tuxedos. A few guests turned, smiling distractedly. One woman I didn't know murmured, "Beautiful wedding, isn't it?" I smiled back politely. I stopped at the head table, just beside the floral archway that framed it like a crown. Vincent noticed me first. His smile froze. "Sienna," he said, rising slightly, "we were just talking business. Something about software implementation that might interest you." "Oh," I said, my voice cool measured. "You mean my software? The one your operations director sourced, demoed, audited, and signed for $30 million. His eyes flickered. Derek straightened in his seat, looking like a kid caught cheating on a test. "Van, maybe now's not the time." I didn't look at him. "Actually, I think it's perfect timing." Tiffany's fork paused midair. "Is there an issue?" "No issue," I said, pulling out my phone. "Just a business decision." "Excuse me?" Vincent asked. I dialed. Julian stood beside me, calm as ever. The call connected. "Gregory? It's Sienna. Cancel the Carter contract. Effective immediately." Gasps. Audible now. Derek's mouth dropped open. "Wait, what?" Vincent rose fully from his chair, voice tight. "Sienna, let's not be hasty. We've already on board." "I understand," I said, still on the line. "Gregory, prep the termination paperwork. Monday morning. No dilas." Tiffany shot to her feet. "You can't just do that. My father, this entire wedding is built on that partnership." I ended the call, slipped the phone back into my clutch. "I can do that," I said, "and I have." Vincent's tone sharpened. "You're canceling a multi-million-dollar deal because of a seating mishap?" I met his eyes. "No, I'm canceling because this seating arrangement revealed your organization's character. If this is how you treat a CEO when you think she's just someone's sister, then I have no confidence in how you'll handle actual complications." Silence, then murmurs. The other businessmen at the table glanced between each other, assessing, recalculating, some intrigued. Derek looked pale. Vanessa, it's Sienna, I snapped. And don't pretend you didn't know. Eleanor told me she mentioned our connection 3 weeks ago. You just didn't want your friends here to know I'm the one holding the contract. His face betrayed him before his mouth could form the denial. Tiffany looked like her face might crack from the strain. You've ruined everything. No, I said, voice like glass. I just refuse to be erased one more time. Vincent sighed heavily. We need to discuss this privately. I don't do backroom deals, I said. This was never about revenge. This was about respect. And you just showed me exactly how little of it exists here. The finality in my voice echoed louder than any string quartet. Julian turned to me, his voice low and warm. Are we done here? I glanced once more at the table where my family had chosen business connections over blood, where they'd ceded power and erased its source. We are, I said, and we walked away, not defeated, but in full control. We had barely reached the valet stand when the yelling started. Sienna, stop right there, young lady. I didn't need to turn to know who it was. My father's voice, Martin Brooks, had a particular rasp when he was angry. I'd heard it behind closed doors my entire childhood. But this time I didn't freeze. I didn't shrink. I kept walking. Julian gently touched my elbow. You want me to handle this? No, I said calmly. Not this time. We turned around just as my father reached us, breathing hard from the effort. His face was red, his tie askew, his hand clenched tightly around his phone like he was ready to call God himself for backup. What the hell do you think you're doing? He snapped. Do you have any idea what you just did to your brother? Clarify, Dad, I said evenly. You mean to your golden son, the one who just let his wife seat me in the kitchen. That was a misunderstanding, he barked. You don't throw away a business partnership over seating. Don't insult my intelligence, I said. It wasn't a mistake. Tiffany told me Scott approved the layout, and you didn't object either. You sit where you're told at someone else's wedding, he growled. That's basic manners. You don't cause a scene. Julian stepped forward, his tone calm but firm. Sir, with all due respect, your daughter is a CEO. She leads a company that your son's father-in-law sought out because it was the best in the industry. She wasn't asking for a favor. She was demanding basic professional respect. My father's eyes narrowed at Julian. And who the hell are you? I'm with her, Julian said simply. My mother appeared then, eyeliner smudged, expression stricken. Sienna, please. What are you doing? Your brother is devastated. What I'm doing, I said slowly, is refusing to accept a lifetime of being treated like a footnote. This isn't the time to rehash old wounds, she pleaded. You're ruining the most important day of your brother's life. I almost laughed. Really, Mom? You think I ruined it? You think a wedding is ruined because the woman you put in the kitchen finally said no more? She winced but didn't answer. And then Derek arrived, tie loosened, face pale, voice shaking. Sienna, what the hell? Richard's pulling his funding from Powell Construction. You've just sabotaged our entire development deal. I looked at him, at the boy who once held my hand when I scraped my knee, and the man who now stood fully behind the people who humiliated me. You couldn't sit quietly for one night, he said. You had to make this about you. Julian made a sound in his throat, but I raised a hand. I had this. My company, I said, is valued at $200 million. It employs over 60 people. I've worked for years without support, without investment, without even a congratulatory text from my own family. And when I signed a contract that would literally fund your father-in-law's expansion plan, you didn't even tell him I existed. He opened his mouth, but I cut him off. This isn't about a wedding table, Derek. This is about a pattern, a lifetime of being diminished so you could shine. Tiffany stormed up then, the train of her dress dragging like a curse. You're just jealous. That's all this is. You can't stand that we have something you don't. I tilted my head. Oh, Tiffany, you think this is about jealousy. You've embarrassed yourself in front of the most powerful people in the city, she hissed. No, I said, voice cool as stone. I've reminded them that I'm the power they've been sitting on without realizing it. Vincent Carter emerged from the tent then, flanked by a frazzled assistant. His eyes scanned the scene, jaw tight. He walked straight up to me. Miss Brooks, this situation has clearly gotten out of hand. Let's discuss this privately. I already made my decision, I said. At least hear me out. No, I said again. Because when I was just the groom's sister, you all showed me exactly how much value you thought I had. Now you're scrambling because you realized I was the infrastructure underneath your next 5 projects. He hesitated, then, to his credit, nodded. I misjudged you. True, I said, but I didn't misjudge myself. And that was the difference. The first email arrived at 6:43 a.m. subject line. Urgent. Request for call regarding Orion Systems contract. By the time I stepped into Orion's downtown Charleston office at 8 o'clock sharp, my inbox had ballooned with over 23 unread messages, all from Carter Enterprises. Some were polite, some were not. All of them wanted the same thing, a second chance. Good morning, Sarah, I said to my assistant as I passed her desk. How early did they start calling? She blinked at me like I'd just walked in from a storm. Miss Brooks, the first call came at 6:05. They've called 7 times since. Eleanor Park left 3 voicemails. Richard Carter called twice himself. And there's a courier downstairs with flowers. Let them sit, I said, setting my bag down. No calls until after 10. I want a full team briefing first. Yes, ma'am, she said, but I could see the question in her eyes. The silent, are we okay? We weren't just okay. We were better than ever. Gregory, my COO, was already waiting in the conference room, nursing coffee and scrolling through our CRM dashboard. You look rested, he said. I slept like a queen, I replied, sliding into the seat beside him. Mind telling me why Carter's team is in full-blown panic mode? I smiled, because I canceled a contract and reminded them whose system they were running on. He let out a low whistle. That explains the LinkedIn pings. Thomas Harrington messaged me this morning. Said he wants a full demo of our new logistics platform. Get him on the calendar this week, I said. And Gerald Winters from Apex already reached out. Says he's interested in funding our next expansion round. I nodded, quietly absorbing the shift. Just 24 hours ago, Carter Enterprises was our crown jewel. Now they were background noise in a much louder, more powerful symphony. At 10 o'clock, I took Eleanor Park's call. Her voice was tight, controlled, but tired. Sienna, I want to start by apologizing. I had no idea about the seating situation until Richard told me this morning. I believe you, I said. You've always been professional. Still, I'm sorry. It was completely uncalled for. I appreciate that, but the contract remains terminated. I figured you'd say that, she said softly, but I had to try. For what it's worth, the system you built, we've never seen anything scale that smoothly. You'll find another vendor, I said. We'll make the transition as painless as possible. She paused. Would you consider renegotiating? Different terms. Clean start. New team. Vincent is willing to issue a formal apology. I didn't respond right away. Not out of spite, but because for the first time I realized I had something far rarer than revenge. Leverage. Real, earned leverage. I'll consider it, I said finally, but only if we discuss this next week. Right now, my team is focused on something bigger. She understood. I could hear it in her silence. After the call, I looked out over the city skyline through the glass wall of my office. I'd spent a lifetime begging for recognition from people who never planned to give it. And the moment I stopped needing their approval, the world opened. Luciano's on Fifth was quiet at 1 p.m. on a Tuesday. The linen tablecloths were freshly pressed. The servers moved like shadows. Soft jazz played in the background. It was the kind of place our parents used to drive past slowly but never entered. Too expensive, too showy. But Derek had chosen it. Maybe that was the point. I arrived first, ordered a black coffee, waited 5 minutes, then 10. At 12 minutes past 1, Derek walked in, tie gone, sleeves rolled up, hair still too perfect in the effortless way he'd always managed. He looked older, not in years, in exhaustion. "Hey," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "Hey," I replied. The silence sat between us like a third sibling, one we both recognized. "I didn't come to fight," he said, avoiding my eyes. "Good, because I didn't come to fix anything." He nodded slowly, picked up the menu, didn't open it. "I talked to Richard," he said. "He's furious, but he said he respects you." I didn't answer. "I told him I did too," Derek added, almost like a confession. That made me look up. "Now." "Yeah." Another silence. "I didn't stop Tiffany from changing the seating chart," he admitted. "She said having you up front would complicate the photo layout. I told her it wasn't worth the fight." I blinked. "So you chose your wife's aesthetic over your sister's dignity?" He flinched. "It wasn't that simple." "Yes," I said. "It was." He exhaled hard, hands clenched on the edge of the table. "You don't know what it's like, being compared to you." That caught me off guard. "Me?" I said, nearly laughing. "Derek, you were the favorite, the star, the heir to everything. I got tech camp and a pat on the head." "Out there, maybe," he said, gesturing vaguely. "But at home? I knew from the time we were teenagers that you were smarter than me. Sharper. I got by on charm and muscle. You built things." I stared at him. He kept going. "When Orion started making headlines, I panicked. I'd spent years trying to live up to Dad's version of me. If you started looking more successful, I didn't know who I was anymore." "So you buried me," I said. "No," he said. I diminished you. Pretended your world didn't exist. Because if people looked too closely, they'd realize I was just the lucky one, not the capable one." His voice cracked on that last sentence. It should have made me feel better. It didn't, because the truth was we were both raised on the same currency, comparison, and he'd just admitted that being chosen came with its own quiet prison. "I didn't come here to forgive you," I said, my voice low. "I know," he whispered, "but I appreciate your honesty. That's more than I ever got from anyone else in our family." He nodded, swallowing hard. "So what happens now?" "I don't know," I said truthfully, "but I'm not interested in pretending we're okay just to keep a holiday table peaceful." "That's fair," he said. "Still, I'd like to try." "For your sake?" I asked. He shook his head. "For mine." For the first time in a long time, I saw him, not as the polished favorite, not as the rival, not as the one who got the spotlight. Just my brother. Flawed, tired, trying. We didn't hug. We didn't pose for a photo. We just finished our coffee in silence, like two people who had finally stepped out of the roles they were given, and into the truth. 2 weeks later, I stood in the center of our downtown Charleston event space, watching the room slowly fill. It wasn't a massive venue, maybe 80 chairs total, soft lighting, exposed brick walls, and a podium made from repurposed oak. But the women arriving were sharp-eyed, nervous, curious. Some held notebooks. Some held babies. All of them held stories. Julian adjusted the mic, while Gregory checked the AV system. My assistant, Sarah, was at the registration table handing out folders labeled Visible, a mentorship initiative by Sienna Brooks. It had started with a simple question. What if we stopped waiting to be seen and started seeing ourselves? The pitch had been easy. I covered the funding personally. No sponsors. No corporate strings. just a space for women in tech, in finance, and logistics. Any field where they'd ever been told to sit in the back, stay small, or wait their turn. The program would pair them with executives from Orion. They'd build portfolios, practice investor pitches, learn how to read contracts and how to own them. We weren't just mentoring. We were rewriting visibility. At 6:10 p.m., just before I took the stage, a familiar voice whispered beside me. "You always did like to cause a scene," she said. I turned. "Ain't Dada." She smiled, hair silver now, but her lipstick still the same fire red I remembered as a girl. My father's older sister. The only adult who ever asked me what I wanted to build when I grew up, not who I wanted to marry. "I saw the press release," she said, hugging me tightly. "I had to come. Even if it means being disinvited from Christmas dinner." She winked. "That's been overdue for years." When I stepped onto the stage, the room quieted instantly. I didn't use notes. I didn't need them. "My name is Sienna Brooks," I began, and for most of my life, I believed that if I just worked hard enough, someone would pull out a chair for me at the table. I paused. They didn't. A murmur of recognition ran through the room. But what I've learned, what I want you to learn, is this. You don't need permission to exist loudly. You don't need an invitation to build something brilliant. And you certainly don't need anyone to seat you. I smiled. You are the table. Applause. Nods. Tears. After the event, a young woman, maybe 23, came up to me. Her name tag read, Maya R. "I don't want to be invisible anymore," she said quietly. "You won't be," I promised. "Not while I'm watching." And I meant it, because revenge wasn't the ending. Visibility was. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't shrinking to fit anyone's frame. I was standing exactly where I was meant to be. And everyone could see it. The magazine hit shelves on a Thursday. It sold out by Friday. On the cover of Forbes Women, beneath bold white serif font, was a photograph of me, Sienna Brooks, standing on the rooftop of the Orion headquarters, arms folded, hair caught mid-breeze, and that same look I gave Vincent Carter the night I walked away. Beneath my name, the headline read, "The Woman Who Refused to Sit in the Kitchen." I stared at it in the quiet of my office. The morning sun was pouring through the windows. A fresh cup of coffee steamed beside me. On the wall behind my desk hung a framed copy of the original Visible Mentorship Pledge, signed by the first 100 women in the program. Now it had chapters in 11 cities. Julian walked in without knocking. "You look serious." I held up the magazine. He grinned. "Told you we'd get there." "Not there," I said softly. "Here." And that was the difference. I wasn't chasing a seat anymore. I was building the entire damn building. The phone buzzed. Maya R., now heading Visible, Dallas, had just landed her first $2 million seed round. I texted back one word, proud. In the hallway, interns were gathering for a tour. One of them peeked into the office and gasped when she saw the magazine cover. Her friend elbowed her, whispering, "That's her." I smiled. Once I would have looked away. Now, I met their eyes. I let them see me, not because I needed to be admired, but because I needed them to know it's possible. To be disregarded, dismissed, underestimated, and still win. Not with screaming, not with vengeance, but with clarity, with presence, with power in your own name. That's the thing about women like us. We don't need anyone to open a door. We've already built the house.